Hi, my name is Laura Pedreros. I am talking about the disorder of eating habits and behaviors among high school students. Definition: the lifestyle of certain population groups can lead to eating habits and dietary and physical activity patterns that become risk factors for chronic disease. On the other hand, access to university implies an important change in the individual which can affect their lifestyle, which makes the population subgroup vulnerable from a nutritional. Eating disorders are serious problems that produce medical and physiosocial complications that can lead to death.
My son was on the wrestling team. When he cut weight by 2 classes, we started to worry.
We had always enjoyed family dinner together, but my daughter started to be very rigid about what she would eat. Eventually, she refused to join us and stayed in her room.
One of my boys would just sit and watch TV and eat snacks. I would find wrappers and food containers everywhere, and he gained 20 pounds in a month.
Our oldest daughter would leave the table to be by herself after every meal. She got sick all the time and looked so pale, but she wouldn't talk about what was going on.
These are the voices of parents who have noticed behavior in their children that could indicate a feeding or eating disorder. The most common of these disorders include anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. These are complex mental health conditions that often occur during the teenage years and can be the source of physical problems, emotional distress, and even medical crisis.
Application for nutrition. Currently, the problems in eating habits brings deplorable consequences such as obesity, food consumption, junks, cause more common disease in different nations of the world. Therefore, it is considered one of the main problems in public health, in which the factors that contribute to child malnutrition are habits. Custom or style life of families are one of the most common causes, which the compromise people metabolize.
Well, the first thing to say about the topic of eating disorders in children is that eating disorders are actually a group of diagnoses that affect adolescents, children in general, quite frequently, so that actually the average onset of an eating disorder like anorexia nervosa, for example, is around the time of puberty, or maybe 3-4 years after the onset of puberty, so in the mid-teens and the later teens. So when we talk about eating disorders in children, it's sort of like we're talking about eating disorders. But eating disorders, it does surprise some people to hear that they can affect children even younger than teens. So children at the age of 12, 10, even sometimes younger, we will see with presenting to eating disorders clinics with eating disorder problems and in need of help. There is some good news about eating disorders in children, which is that if you can recognize it early, there's a relatively good prognosis for recovery or the person sort of turning around the eating problem. And that is often particularly the case if the child and the family can work together with an experienced professional to help them proper feeding and eating behaviors. Children, of course, present special types of problems, especially younger children, in terms of trying to figure out whether an eating problem is going on. So a child is not going to be able to describe their emotional world in the same type of abstract way that an older adolescent or adult is going to be able to talk about their internal world. So there may be more sort of figuring out cues that you see in children, to figure out whether an eating problem is going on. So maybe a child's coming home from school and they're bringing back their lunch and it's not eaten on most days. Well, maybe that tells you something is going on. Weight loss, of course, if it seems to be progressing. And in particular with children, while there can be weight fluctuations, if you go to the pediatrician and the pediatrician says, oh, your child has fallen off the growth curve, that could be an indication, that something is going on. Clearly in children, you also always have to rule out, like with adults too, that there's not a medical problem that's contributing to the weight loss that better explains the the eating problem. But the good news, again, is that with early intervention in these eating problems in children, there can be a relatively good prognosis. So again, like with all eating problems in children and adults, early intervention and treatment is critical.
Pros and cons. Influence better food education for young people. How to eat and balance and healthy diet is essential. Cons. 2 out of every 3 young people aged year suffer from eating disorder and the number increases every year. Depression, low self-esteem, decreased fertility, and many other pathologies.
When a child is overweight, the extra pounds may not be the only concern for parents and doctors. A new study finds children and adolescents who were once overweight or obese may be at a higher risk for developing an eating disorder.
Oftentimes, the weight loss is reinforced by their pediatrician, and even if it's occurring in the context of lots of really eating disordered behaviors, really unhealthy behaviors, it takes quite some time for the medical professionals to catch on.
Mayo Clinic researchers looked at case studies of children and teenagers who came into the emergency room. They found those who were once overweight or obese represented a large portion of kids being treated for eating disorders, bulimia, anorexia, and binge eating. Researchers say early intervention promotes the best chance of recovery, so they're urging doctors to look for the signs. They say eating disorders should be on a doctor's radar regardless of the patient's weight. Dr. Heinberg says parents should work together with their pediatrician to set healthy goals for their child.
Depending on the age of a child, oftentimes weight loss is not the goal. You know, kids have the advantage that they're growing. And so when you look at kids who may be prepubertal or early in puberty, the goal for an overweight kid is often just to maintain that weight and grow into it.
With Everyday Health, I'm Taryn Brill.
Issue applied in Ecuador. Ecuador has the second highest rate of eating disorder in Latin America. The prevalence of nutritional status was overweight 20.3%, obesity of the 17.8%, with a significant difference in relation to sex and malnutrition due to deficit, 1.3%. Conclusion. Eating disorder of young students must be treated in time with a professional, nutritional psychiatrist, so that they can work together and problems are not complicated and that they improve their lifestyle. Thank you.